Another subject I would like to talk about is the blind physiotherapy profession worldwide. I think many of us know a blind physiotherapist or two who had trained in what was the old London School for the Blind, and many of them came back here to New Zealand and practiced. I have always had the utmost admiration for the blind physiotherapists, and am so envious of the way they have developed their sense of touch and their sense of space, and also their wonderful powers of concentration when they're sitting in lectures or meetings. I hope that we will interview, or we will hear the stories of a lot of physiotherapists who are blind. There are several working in New Zealand that I know personally, Don Mackenzie for one, and Richard Hoskin another. Both have delightful stories to tell of being visually impaired. However, the story I want to tell you today is when I was working in Switzerland, some 8 or 9 years ago now, I had one of the most humbling experiences I have ever had as a physiotherapist, when I was invited to teach a Mulligan concept course to the visually impaired physiotherapists of Switzerland. One of their members had been to one of my courses and had felt so truly enlightened by the concept and how useful it was, especially for blind physios, that he persuaded the Swiss Blind Foundation that I should be their visiting speaker for their 5-day annual upgrade or in-service education. The Blind Foundation in Switzerland owns the most beautiful hotel, I suppose you would call it, accommodation anyway, in a place called Sarnen, over towards the west of Switzerland. In fact, just about the boundary where the German language gives way to the French. It is up in the mountains, high above the town of Gstaad, which is a famous ski resort. It was an old sanatorium, and indeed had the big balconies off the bedrooms, where in those days the TB patients sat out getting the fresh mountain air and the sunshine to cure their TB. It has been greatly modified since the Blind Foundation took over, and in fact handrails and modern facilities have been added, including a modern wing, but it is brilliantly geared for visually impaired people, even to the extent of having kennels and a running track with ropes around it where the people can run their dogs after work, and then there are kennels for them or showers for them, and they can be looked after down there out of the way. A wonderful swimming pool and wonderful staff running the hotel. So we arrived. I had a German-speaking assistant with me from my workplace in Bad Ragaz to help me, because these people generally did not speak much English, this particular group. So my German was by no means good enough to lecture for 5 days in German. At that stage we were running the Mulligan course in Europe as 2.5 or 3 day program, but we decided we would need to move more slowly with the visually impaired group, and we allowed 5 days. And so we had 14 visually impaired therapists and 2 myself and my assistant. We had probably 4 dogs, guide dogs. We had numerous white canes, and some of the people had tape recorders. One even had a little braille typewriter, but by and large they took no notes. It was the most humbling week, because we we had breakfast together in the mornings, then we went to class, we had lunch together, we worked again in the afternoon. They exercised their dogs or had a swim with us. We joined them for dinner, and invariably we joined them around the piano for some sort of sing-song and party in the evening. It was fascinating to watch those that were partially sighted help those that had no sight, and the little tricks of how they could know how much was in a glass, or whether the glass was water or wine, or where was the food on their plates. And it was just an incredible experience sitting at the table with these people, watching them. I watched one totally visually impaired man eat spaghetti bolognese 3 nights in a row, and he didn't splutter one drop. All the spaghetti went straight to his mouth. I thought that was incredible. I can't eat it that well. When I demonstrated a technique, I would sort of stand and hold the position, and then the people would come around and feel where my fingers were. They were interested in which way my feet were pointing, how far apart they were. Was I up close to the patient? How far was I away? All of these things they could quickly register just by a very gentle fluttering of their hands over my hands and down my body. And it was such an amazing experience to watch these people learn what I was demonstrating. I could see it all visually, but I really had never stopped to think about what it might look like to be trying to learn with my eyes closed. The course was wonderful. Their English wasn't very good on day 1, but I'll tell you what, by day 5 it was marvellous. So was their manual therapy. They have wonderful touch anyway, but because, well, good physios have reasonable touch, visually impaired people have superb touch. And there's the most lovely phrase in the German language, Fingerspitzengefühl, which means fingertip sensitivity, and they certainly have it. It was interesting when we had a little quiz at the end of each day for them to come and demonstrate techniques that I had taught, because it was very important for me to get good feedback. And without exception, they could all go straight. Their memories were superb. It was like they had the whole Mulligan textbook firmly imprinted in their heads, and they could just go straight to it and perform a technique beautifully. Meantime, I had the distraction of looking out the window at the beautiful Swiss Alps, at looking down to the village down below, of the beautiful clouds and the cows with their cowbells. All of these things so easily distract when you're sitting in class with that sort of view. At the final closing ceremony, when I presented the certificates and told them how much I had enjoyed the week with them, the leader of the group, in making his speech, told me that it was the nicest course he had ever been on, and they all felt the same about it. I thought this was wonderful praise indeed.